Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play
Toejam Earl in panic on Funkotron.
I have several friends who would pretty much main me if I didn't use that clip somewhere in the LP, and I can't fault them. Update Day's a very fun video. Nirvana the band and their show as well as their movie are all pretty fun. Especially the movie, I really liked that more than most of the other episodes of the show I've seen or even the original web episodes. A little dated here and there, but hey, it's like they started doing those episodes in like, what, 2007? Speaking of 7, welcome to Stage 7, the Slammin' Slopes. I'm still not sure if that's actively meant to be a name for the overall level or just the section you start in, though. Because honestly, they're kind of vague about that with how the text boxes are laid out. Because largely, if a piece of text is distinct from another piece of text, they will give it its own info box. But that's the only time they really don't, so, This level has about 29 Earthlings for us to capture across its length, and not for nothing, it's a relatively straightforward stage, pretty flat on the whole, not too many curves in its level design. Even getting the second piece of Lamont's favorite stuff for the best ending here isn't too bad, because remember, we're going to need to do that in every level moving forward until pretty much the exact end of the game. I did realize, though, I think there was actively an Earthling I forgot to talk about last time, namely the dude who's just in a box, who is named, according to the manual, Naked Man in Box. The way that enemy works is that when you're a certain distance away from them, he peeks out of the box and just starts singing operatically, but the moment you get too close, he hides in the box and starts moving left and right, kicking you if he gets too close. While he's in the box, he's pretty much completely invincible. And he's also a relatively healthy enemy, taking 7 jars or so by default to capture. With that said, because I have the permanent super jars that you get from completing all 3 hyperfunk zones 3 times each, that part's not a worry. I've heard actively just placing some jars on the ground can be a pretty effective strategy against the Naked Man. The manual itself even shouts that out, I believe. But I've never found it too reliable, if only because there's something about placing jars on the ground as a trap option that just feels like it doesn't work the way it should, or at least in any kind of comfortable time frame. It's like the one quote-unquote offensive option in this game I basically never use. While we progress through this stage, let's actively get back to talking about the game's dev staff. The next person listed in the credits is Michelle Shelfer, who's listed for doing additional artwork for the game, which tracks given the rest of her gameography. She started working on the Apple II GS version of Skate or Die before being a background artist for Altered Destiny on the Amiga. Then she worked on this, and then she was a graphics designer and animator on pretty much all the notable PC Carmen Sandiego games. Where in the World, Where in the USA, Where in Time, Where in America, The Great Amtrak Adventure, all those. The thing that was really nostalgic to see in her specific list of projects, though, is her final listed credit is being a graphic artist on Kid Pix Studio Deluxe for 90s and early 2000s Macs. I have a bizarre amount of nostalgia for that program, despite never owning an Apple anything, really, outside of like an iTouch at one point or another. That's because the iMacs that my public school career had pretty much through to early middle school were the ones that had like the big Frutager Aero transparent pieces of plastic on them. They all had that on it. I remember playing it. I don't remember too much what I would do in detail with it outside of the one command that like made the screen slowly turn metallic circle by circle and it made a really loud sound because something about that sound greatly pleased me. Next up we have the game's assistant producer, Marian Arozorena Martinon. Her first credit was as a tester on the Little Mermaid game for the Genesis back in '92. Then after that, she was immediately on this project. Following this game, she performed a similar role on Echo Tides of Time, Echo Jr., Vector Man, Mr. Bones on the Saturn, Duke Nukem 0 Hour on N64, Indiana Jones and the Staff of Kings on PSP and PS2, as well as being a production manager on the Monkey Island special editions from around 2010, as well as The Force Unleashed 2. Leonore McCaig is credited for invaluable aid, which, given their only other credit is for production assistance on Orly's Draw Story, I assume they just gave some general help. Similarly for Michelle Harrell, who's credited as more invaluable aid. She often did some administrative support on projects like the DOS and Amiga versions of Monkey Island 2, on top of being an art technician on games like The Dig for DOS, The Curse of Monkey Island, and Full Throttle. Next up are the 2 lead testers for the project. One is Evan Wells, who we mentioned last time as one of the level designers. The other tester was Dante Anderson. He started as a tester on Home Alone for the Game Gear, then did the same for the Genesis release of Home Alone 2 Lost in New York. He also did level layouts for The Amazing Spider-Man vs. the Kingpin, testing on Shadowrun for the Genesis. He was a producer on the 2 Clockwork Knight titles on the Sega Saturn, as well as the first 2 Panzer Dragoon titles. He was then a senior producer on Duke Nukem Time to Kill on the PS1, and a tester on both Citizen X and Eternal Champions. I've talked about before, and especially very recent LPs, that looking at the credits for developers and games I play can be very interesting because you see their careers take very different paths. This probably is one of the most wild credit sequences we've looked at in a while in that regard, because the people just go so many different directions. We're not done with testers, though. In fact, this game has 6 different categories of testers credited. Next up is Lieutenant Lead Advisors, who are Maria Tuzo and Christine Converse, though the latter is credited as Christine Watson. The former started as a tester on Eternal Champions and continued doing such roles on various Sega releases. Roles include Aladdin on Genesis, Sonic Chaos on Game Gear, Jurassic Park on Genesis, Shadowrun on Genesis, Streets of Rage 3, the Master System version of Spinball, Sonic 3 and Sonic & Knuckles, the Sega CD release of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, and X-Men 2 Clone Wars. Before we get into Christine, time for us to head towards this stage's hidden collectible. Hi, Balloona! There's another secret path for you to follow. Okay, why? This one will lead you to the great Funkopotamus's favorite red sneakers. Oh? Maybe these will help you get him to come out of the funk dimension. Cool. Don't forget to use your powers of funk. Okay, thanks. In order to get Lamont's favorite thing for this specific stage, you need to go talk to Balloona there, and then follow the signs that start spawning in pretty directly. Eventually, they'll lead you to the wall on the left side of this area and lead you into a secret passageway on them. In that secret passageway, there's a wall you can funk move teleport into and feel about to find a door that opens up after talking to Balloona to get the Lamont secret item in question. On that note, I probably should mention one of the worst feeling things about this game at large is when you're trying to find a hidden doorway in one of the hidden passageways that you can't see into, like this one. Because the only way you can actually find the door is just by mashing up on the D-pad while moving left and right slowly, which admittedly is how you find most of these hidden doorways to begin with. But it feels especially bad when you don't have a really good idea of the space the room you're in takes up, like the invisible passageways like that. 2 items down, 8 to go. Back onto Christine Converse, though. She started as a play tester on several DOS titles, seemingly all made by or published by Strategic Simulations Incorporated. These include Legends of Valor, Spelljammer, Pirates of Realm Space, Dark Sun, Shattered Lands, among a few others. At some point, though, she fell in with Sega during that era, specifically being a playtester on this, Echo the Dolphin, Dynamite Headdy, Streets of Rage 3, Panzer Dragoon 1, and Echo Tides of Time alongside several other titles. Come the 2000s, though, she seemingly hopped over to Capcom working in their creative services divisions, being credited on such projects like the DS vs. Ace Attorneys 2 and 3, Ace Attorney 4, and I think the first Edgeworth game. She also did such work on Mega Man Star Force 1 Leo, ZX Advent, Resident Evil 5, Okami Den, DuckTales Remastered, and Dead Rising 3, just to name a few across a relatively long stay there. Since then, she's either credited in additional support, production, or program management roles at Sony or Gearbox, doing such on Tiny Tina's Wonderland, Marvel Iron Man VR, or Tribes of Midgard, respectively, for those 3 role types. Like I said earlier, though, we're far from being done with this game's testers, because while we finish the Lieutenant Lead testers, there's still testers, yet more testers, and even more testers. Wow, that's probably the most categories I've seen for that in a while. So the main testers themselves were Conan Teagard, Mike Underwood, Casey Grimm, and Jason Kuo. Just to start off with Mike Underwood, this is actively his only credit. Conan Teagard's resume is entirely based in game testing, doing such on various projects like Tailspin on the Genesis, Home Alone on the Game Gear, Tasmania, Night Trap, Aladdin on Genesis, Echo the Dolphin 1, both halves of Sonic 3, and Gex, with his most recent credit, according to Moby Games at least, being 2010's Eternal Champions on PC, though he was also a lead tester on projects like Shining Force 2 and Subterranea alongside several other things. With that said, welcome to Level 8. We're starting off in Danger Alley here, which is named such because, frankly, there's just a lot of really dangerous Earthlings here, especially if you let them stack up on top of each other. There's also a lot of Earthlings in this level at a whopping 52. Not for nothing, getting the Lamont's favorite thing here is pretty straightforward, but it's also one of the more tedious ones to get in the game, only because, as we'll see, it requires a lot more back and forth than some of the other ones do, albeit it's over pretty quickly still. Holding up on this platform allows us to access another Trixie's Secret Rendezvous, and this one's got a bit of an odd power-up for us, but it's one that's pretty useful in this specific level. Namely, the moment you actively get on top of any sponge moss, you're immediately sent up to the highest elevation you can get to without having to do multiple bounces. This would honestly be very useful in a few more levels, and I kind of wish it was a bit more common, but hey, I'll take it where I can get it, I suppose. Going back to the testers in the meanwhile, Casey Grimm's career is another one studded almost entirely with QA adjacent roles, with the only exception being in the Amazing Spider-Man vs. Kingpin on the Sega CD, where he did some additional level layout work. He got his start on Spider-Man for the Master System, then did work on Spider-Man on Genesis, Echo the Dolphin 1, Dungeons & Dragons Warriors of the Eternal Sun, Sonic the Hedgehog Spinball Shadowrun, Killing Time on the 3DO and its remaster in 2024, as well as that same Eternal Champions game we just mentioned. Yo, Toejam. Yo, Lawanda. I'm glad you're here. I'm getting scared. The funk keeps going away. Don't worry, Lawanda. All I have to do is find some of the Funkopotamus' favorite stuff, and I bet we can get him to come back. Oh, I hope you can. Peebo was just here, and he said that he knows where Lamont's favorite picture is. Where's Peebo? He got scared a minute ago when the funk went away, and he ran off to hide. I'm a little worried about him. Poor Peebo. Yeah, whenever he gets nervous, he gets the hiccups so bad he can hardly talk. He just started hiccuping and ran off. Maybe I can find him. Kind of an odd thing about Peebo in very specific sections of this game is that they kind of imply you can hear his hiccuping to help find him. But as far as I know, that's not actually a mechanic, unless I'm just completely missing something. Oh yeah, that's something I forgot to mention. Similarly to how you can hold down to avoid the tourist's flash photography attack, whenever the duck on the magic carpet actively does a dive bomb attack on you, you can hold down to just hit the floor. And it does help you avoid the attack, but at the same time, I'd say those moments are actively better used throwing jars at the duck to capture them outright if you have super jars or just deal damage to their health bar. I find you can more easily and at times more consistently dodge them by just jumping constantly while also throwing jars. As long as you're not being caught on the way back down, you'll probably jump over the dive bombs, no problem. Either that, or the duck will just aim at your higher position outright, and thus you'll dodge it by nature of just being lower on the screen. The final person credited under the role that's just testers is Jason Kuo. He started as a tester on Home Alone for the Game Gear, then did the same on many of the same projects we've already mentioned several times across the LP. Aladdin on Genesis, Sonic Spinball, Sonic Chaos, Streets of Rage 3, Sonic 3 and Knuckles, etc. Outside of some brief returns to that role, like in 2010's Eternal Champions, though, he eventually settled into doing work in either localization and production moving forward, doing the former on much of Sega's output from around 2000 till about 2016. Localization-wise, he worked on projects like Sonic Shuffle, Phantasy Star Online Episodes 1 and 2, Sonic Rush and Riders, Sonic Unleashed HD, All-Stars Racing Transform, Crazy Taxi 2, and the handheld Sonic Boom titles. While he did a lot of production on Sonic Jam, Sonic R, the Sonic Rivals Duology, All-Stars Racing Original, and all the versions of Sonic Generations. His most recent credit was a special thanks mention in Yakuza 5 Remastered. I think that last credit is specifically that because he was a senior producer on the original release of Yakuza 5, but seemingly had left the industry in some form by 2016 or so. Because his last credit otherwise, that's not a special thanks mention, was Sonic Boom Fire and Ice on 3DS. After that group is the next group of testers titled More Testers. These include Adam Ellis, Rick Greer, Mark Lindstrom, Bill Person, and Chris Sinclair. Adam Ellis seemingly started as a tester on NFL Football 94 starring Joe Montana for the Genesis, then did similar work on a lot of titles we've already mentioned. He also did testing work on Disney's Aladdin, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers on Game Gear, Super Columns, was a lead on Mr. Bones Period, was a promotional assistant producer on Duke Nukem Time to Kill, and his last notable roles were as a tester on 10-6 Online, as well as doing music for World War II GI in 2015. Rick Greer started as a tester on the same project as Adam Ellis, then did pretty familiar projects I've already talked about 20 times in this LP. Sonic Spinball, Sonic Chaos, Sonic 3 Knuckles. Also did test work on Clockwork Knight, Daytona USA's Saturn release, Knuckles Chaotix, Virtua Fighter Kids, the Saturn release of Duke Nukem 3D, while both his most recent roles were as a QA tester on either Battlefield 2, as well as the PS2 era Godfather title. With that said, let's get back to the game because it's time to start going after this stage's Lamont's favorite item. Hi again, Otis.
How's the Earthling collection biz going?
Not bad.
I reckon you'll be pretty famous when you get them all.
You think so?
Why sure, you're gonna have to start a Toejam Earl fan club.
Way cool! So here's the thing. The hidden door that leads to where the Lamont's favorite thing for this stage is hidden in the wall directly to the right of Otis. But it won't activate until we've talked to another NPC, gone back to talk to Otis again, then go back to talk to that other NPC a second time. So we're actually going to be going through this big chunk of level I'm going through right now about 3 or 4 times in total, and it's kind of tedious. It's quick tedium, admittedly, compared to some other tedium I've done in this game, and let alone other games, but definitely annoying. Yo, Charla. Is everything going okay? Sure, I was just on my way to see Bluna when I heard this funny hiccuping sound. Where did you hear that? I'm not sure, but it's coming from somewhere around here. I bet I know what it is. Maybe I'll just look around. Well, talk to you later then. See you, Charla. So that's your hint that Peebo is nearby. Specifically, he's actively in the reeds here between these two rocks. What's up, Toejam? Hey, Peebo. Why are you hiding? I think I'm a little bit nervous about the Funky going away. Wow, you have the hiccups bad. Yeah, although those are cured, but I always forget what it is. Say, Peebo, do you know where I can find Lamont's favorite picture? Sure, just go up to... I didn't quite get that. Oh no, don't try to talk, Peebo. I'll get the cure from Otis and come back. That's probably gonna hurt my throat if I keep doing that like that, huh? I think the thing that always just kind of throws me off about the whole Peebo hiccuping thing as like a puzzle-solving element is... I don't know why they didn't just make an actual sound effect play.
Hi, Toejam.
Hey, Otis. Say, Otis, do you know a cure for the hiccups?
Yep, sure do. Just go up to the person who's got him and say, Fligglefritz. Works every time.
Okay, thanks. And back to Peebo we go. I don't know, maybe it just strikes me as odd that they went out of the way to talk about him hiccuping so much when he gets nervous in both the manual as well as a couple of stages. And they didn't just go to the effort to actually have a unique hiccup sound for him, but at the same time, that would probably mean they would want to use it more often, and they didn't want to lean into that too much as a level design gimmick. Hi, Toejam. Hey, Peebo. Think. Fligglefritz. Hey, it works. They're gone. Cool. Now just don't get nervous again. I'll try. So, do you know where I could find the picture that the Funkopotamus likes? Yeah, if you funk move into the wall next to Otis, there's a secret door there. Thanks, Peebo. Sure, catch you later, Toejam. As much as I would like to say you could just funk move into the wall and grab the door before Peebo mentions it, it's just straight up not there until you've actively hit those flags. There's maybe like 1 or 2 levels at most that have the Lamont's favorite thing door spawned in prior to doing anything that ties into the location of it through NPCs. Most of the time, it just requires doing the quest line, which I don't mind in concept. There's just specific levels that really bother me to do it in. And not for nothing, like I mentioned, you technically don't need to get all of Lamont's favorite stuff to get the best ending. To getting them all just actively gets you a massive point bonus on top of the best ending. And since I want to do 100% LP, well, here we are getting them all. At least what I consider 100% LP. I'm assuming some people will consider 100%ing in this game, getting all the Trixies, rendezvous points, as well as getting all the points you can along the way. That's not exactly my cup of tea, admittedly. If there's something I can think of that could maybe make the Lamont's favorite thing quest a little bit less awkward with moments like that, admittedly, it's maybe if some of them were the last thing you did in a level and there were just fewer Earthlings in some levels. Because if there is something I can say that is harder to go back to about this game, especially with how I tend to go back and play it, it's the later levels just get to be such comparative slogs to the early game that I'll play maybe up to the halfway point and then just kind of stop. Especially when I get to moments like the Cavern of Coolness here, which are just a big up, down, and all-around trek through small caves on bubbles, finding 1 or 2 humans at a time to just capture and then move on to the next few. That, combined with the already at times kind of weird ways you find a piece of Lamont's favorite stuff, makes the back half or so of this game really take a hit pacing-wise. And that's part of the major reason I'll maybe only play up to the halfway point, but it's also just the factor of, by the time I reach the halfway point, I've generally just had my fill. I like this game a good bit, but while I do like the gameplay, half the reason I do come back to this game admittedly is the soundtrack and general vibe. And by the time I reach level 8, 9, or 10, I've generally had enough of that vibe for a day and I can just put the controller down nice and satisfied. Because truly, there's a lot of games I could consider time capsules for the era they came out in. Something about Panic on Funkotron, and it might literally just even be down to the title being what it is, feels like it's one of the most quintessentially American early 90s video games you can find out there. The vibe of the music, the vibe of the visuals, hell, directly just how every character talks. Very few games at the time felt like they were doing it this earnestly, and frankly, a lot of games that came after that tried to do this felt like they were trying too hard. It's kind of weird. This game feels very natural with how everything it does flows together. despite how, frankly, most other projects that try to do this don't. And maybe that's just my perspective on the idea of it because I played this game growing up, let alone having played it from a young age because I was born several years after this game released. But something about it is just truly unique compared to other entities that tried to be like it even during the era. With that said, we're finally done with level 8, so it's time for us to move on officially to the latter half of the game with level 9 and beyond. But like I said, the later levels can get kind of lengthy, and like I've already foreshadowed, we're only at about the halfway point of the LP, so we've still got quite a bit to go. But with that, I'm going to need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, and in part 6, we're going to start off with level 9 before I believe moving on to level 10. See you guys then.